Now we're going to look at the group 2 sulfates. So the chemistry of the group 2 sulfates, we're going to start with what their formulas would look like. So we're group 2 metals, and sulfate ion is a 2- ion. So MsO4. So if we were to do that for magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, and then we're going to look at their solubility. So magnesium sulfate is completely soluble, and barium sulfate is incredibly insoluble. And so the solubility of the group 2 sulfates is the opposite to the hydroxides. The solubility decreases down group 2. So calcium sulfate is sparingly soluble and barium sulfate is insoluble. And then we're going to look at the uses of barium sulfate in medicine. So barium sulfate is opaque to X-rays. So it absorbs X-rays and shows up it is used to allow X-rays to view soft tissue. Barium ions are toxic, but this technique doesn't actually hurt the patient because it's so insoluble it's not absorbed into the blood. So we'd probably want to highlight that part. It's not absorbed into the blood, it doesn't cause us any harm because it's insoluble. Oops. Just a little point that this combination of tests of the sulfates and the hydroxides can be used to help us identify group 2 metal ions or the hydroxide or the sulfate ion. So if we think one of our samples contains magnesium ions, we could add something like sodium hydroxide, and our magnesium ions would precipitate out because magnesium hydroxide is sparingly soluble, and so we would get a white precipitate. If we wanted to test for hydroxide ions, we could also add magnesium ions, although it might be a little bit easier just to add indicator and check that it was alkaline. If we want to test for sulfate ions in a similar way, we could add barium ions. So barium ions, like in barium chloride, would react with sulfate ions to give a white precipitate of the completely insoluble barium sulfate. And we could test for sulfate this way with barium ions or barium ions with sulfate ions. So for example, if we had a colourless solution and we knew it contained a group 2 metal, we could add sulfuric acid, and whichever one gave a white precipitate would be the barium ions, the one that contained barium ions. This is not, remember, a test for barium and magnesium, it's a test for the ions of barium and magnesium. So it'd have to be something like barium chloride, magnesium chloride that we were testing.